neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
Well, here we are, last show of 2023.
I cannot believe it's already the last show of 2023.
What show number is this?
This is episode 340, I think it was.
No. It's 5 something or other, 530 something.
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. 540.
540, yeah.
540, not 340.
Yeah, my goodness. No, about 540 shows. That's
It's pretty impressive.
they said I'd never get past 425, and look, here we are.
Look at you.
Yeah, well, anyway, I'm here by myself right now. Camille must be running late, which, happens occasionally. So when she gets in, we'll hook her up. If not, then we'll just have to banter about with Taylor here and talk about our past year and what we think is going to happen in the future. And also we'll talk about the nonprofits a little bit more because they got a lot of stuff coming up. Plus, we're going to say goodbye to a couple of sponsors today who've been very, very faithful. And it kind of ties into some of the commentary about the economy and what I think is happening and is going to happen, whatever else. And so, we'll see what happens. We're just going to kind of wing it today. It's close to holiday. You have any plans for the New Year's, Taylor?
Oh, just sleep.
You don't have like a big party or family get together.
Very exclusive. I can't talk about it. On the air.
I see. You and Elon are going to fly around on his jet, and
I mean, you heard it first here.
yeah, it's like some of these celebrities they'll want to celebrate New Year's in like 3 or 4 different locations, so they'll hire a private jet.
I mean,
Yeah, that's a bit excessive.
One day.
I don't know if I've stayed up past midnight on New Year's Eve in years because it's just another day, And if it weren't for the football, I don't know. I'm just an old grump. Anyway, but it's been a good year for the most part. I mean, there's been ups and downs, both, in our lives and also in the lives of our country. And so we'll be talking about that. And, I'm going to mention a couple things about the upcoming local elections as well. So here you go. Just lots of stuff. But before we go to lots of stuff, let's talk about our sponsors. Today, we say goodbye to CrossFit Burleson, one of the original sponsors. Daniel sold the business back in June, and he kept going as a sponsor to the end of the year, but he hasn't had the business in 6 months. So I appreciate that extended courtesy you gave us, Daniel. I appreciate your support. The ladies that run it are still, working to expand their plans, and so they're what's happening in the economy is that a lot of people are streamlining their budget. And so I appreciate CrossFit Burleson for everything they've done. I hope to see you again as a sponsor when things pick up, which maybe they will, maybe they won't. We'll talk about that in a minute. But thank you, CrossFit Burleson, for all you've done and what you do for the community over at 317 Southwest Wilshire. Also, another one that's also having to consolidate is my good friend Shandy. We were talking about this week, and she has sold a couple of houses, but she said the real estate market really is tough. And in some places, it's non-existent. Here in Burleson, it's still somewhat active. But there are also a lot of other real estate agents. I talked to a couple of others that I know of, and they say the same thing, that it just the interest rates made it very, very difficult to sell a house because a lot of people who would consider selling a house don't want to leave because they don't want to pick up a higher rate. And they got a 3.5-4% rate right now. And so right now the market is somewhat stagnant. Across the country, it's declining. I know the value of my house has declined about, we'll say about 5 to 6% in the last year, which is what it is. But Shandy, I appreciate everything you've done. I hope to see you again real soon when the market picks up. She says she'll get back on the show, but right now just things are stagnant. So this is not unusual. I've had 2 other sponsors, Thrive and Texas Farm Bureau with Melissa Harmon, tell me the same thing. It's just that the economy is what it is. It's not that great, and so they have to find ways to, shave off some expenses, and that's certainly understandable. And I appreciate everything that Shandy's done and what Melissa's done and what Dee Dee did with Thrive and what Daniel's done with CrossFit. And I hope, we can do business again very, very soon. But you got to take care of business, and I'm all about that. Otto, I was talking to Otto the other day. Our place is doing pretty well. But it's always in the restaurant business. It's one step ahead of the expenses because restaurants are really hard to run. And Otto and I have talked about this extensively, but our place is doing pretty well. And I was there last week. I'll be there next week. And it's always the same with the food, the service, the atmosphere. So they're doing pretty well. And I hope during the holidays you have a chance to go by and not only just go to our place for a meal, but also thank Otto for what he does for this community. Also, thank you to Wild Cigar. I was talking to Nathan, one of the partners in Wild, and they're going to have the bowl games on, and they're going to have the playoff games. Cowboys are on Saturday night. I have them on, plus they have some specials going on with cigars. They're not going to be open late on New Year's Eve. It's on a Sunday, and they said they don't do business much on Sunday, and they also like to give their employees a day off or the evening off, and so they won't be there, but they're going to be open during the day, Monday on the 1st, and with all the college games and whatnot. So it's a good place to go have a smoke and a cigar and have a drink and just hang out with your friends. Also, thank you to Local Life Magazine. Thank you for the plug you put in for us yesterday on your website. They're really good about advertising. 30,000 homes get this. They'll be out next week. Regardless of what the holiday season is, they're going to be there for you. And so it's a great magazine. They have good local articles, great local articles, and I appreciate what you do for us there, Tiffany. Sorry. Also, the Burleson Buzz. If you go to burlesonbuzz.com/Allard23, you'll get discounted on your subscription. It's like I said, it's already very inexpensive, so you're getting a real bargain. But also, you're going to have a situation where you're going to keep up with the news. And I use Burleson Buzz, honestly, for a lot of the shows I do with the nonprofits, but mostly with Victoria or Dan McClendon or any other local office holder, because he really does keep us informed. He and Sarah Carlson over at the Municipal Matters, I think, as much as anything else, keep the people of this community really focused on what's going on. And I get a lot of information from it. So give it a read. It really is. He's very earnest. I had his mom and his sister on this day. Yeah, you might have saw the show, The Mixie Chicks, and they brought samples.
Oh, yes, I did.
Wasn't that good? It really was.
Good.
It was really good, and I'm thinking, we need to have them back on again on a regular basis with samples.
How about Tuesday?
Yeah, I got Jessica Valley Reams Tuesday. She might. No, I have them on tentatively the week prior to St. Patrick's Day. I thought, name
Nice.
like O'Brien. Yeah, so they're going to be on again in about 3 months, and I may have the daughter Samantha on soon for a show. I'd like to discuss what's a very popular mode these days of education. That's homeschooling. So we'll be talking about that, and I have some perspective on it as a public school teacher, but I'd like to hear the other perspective of it as well. So anyway, let's go ahead and run through the rest of these because I want to do the nonprofit separately. Southern Gym, they took this week off, thankfully, because my wife was exhausted after 2 weeks. I mean, they were putting a lot of hours in. Southern Gym is going to be back open again Tuesday, and they got a great inventory still. They had a really good December, very good December. And so Southern Gym will be open again for repairs and for cleaning and for design and for inventory. So it's back to business, dadgummit. So Southern Gym. Thank you, Gayla. Also, Old Pro Roofing, John Williams, 817-734-2756. If your roof is needing repairs, you need an inspection, get John to do it because you're going to get the straight story. You're not going to get upsold. You're not going to get doomsday scenarios or anything like that. He'll tell you, like he told me, that my roof is fine. And it's nice to know, if you've ever, I had a roof many, many years ago. I mean, it's been a while that had problems. And it just really wears you out when here comes a storm because you don't know what's going to be happening. And last time in the storm, I didn't have any problems worrying about it because my roof was in good shape. Thank you, Old Pro, and see you next year. Also, see you next year, Camco, Sammy Campbell, Candy Gal. It's the rates are what they are. I'm not really going to speculate a lot about what they're doing today. They could tell you what's doing it today. I could tell you what's happened to them and what they prognosticate, but they'll tell you that, it's going on right at the moment. And so if you want to think about financing a house, refinancing a house, call Sammy and Candy. They've done it twice for me, and they do a really, really good job, to say the least. So it's 817-778-4592 for Sammy. And for Candy, it's 817-925-2661. And, they're here in town. They're at the B&G complex in that southern building on the third floor. What do you think is going to happen next, Taylor? You have any idea?
Oh, in 2024?
No, let's do that the second half. Okay. What do you think of 2023? How was
What do
it
I
for
think
you?
of 23?
Yeah.
It had its highs and lows.
What was the high point for you?
High point for me,
Well, as you
running
saw
the
it.
show, of course.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll say that would be appropriate for me to say as well, because I've had a lot of really good guests on the air. I've been very fortunate in this show. I've had a lot of support. I have friends and, not just sponsors, but also people that have been very, very supportive. They said that, they don't always hear every show I do, and I don't blame them because they got lives to live, but they will tell you, that there's certain shows that really inform them on what's going on. They really do like the shows I do with city council members, because they'll get maybe a bit more clarity on what's going on. You get on Facebook and you think this and that and the other's going on with certain areas of city politics, and yet if you come talk to Victoria, she'll straighten you out, or Dan will, or Larry Scott will, and it's always very helpful to have that kind of access to the city council, because they'll straighten out all the rumors and innuendos and prognostications and assumptions. That's always been good. Also, the nonprofits, I really do talk about them a lot, and I will talk about it again in a few minutes about their year-end needs. But it just touches me to see how many people we have working for the benefit of people in this community, and I'm honored to have them on the show, because I'm pleased to be able to provide a platform for them to come and tell us what they're doing. Because a lot of people don't see it. They're going about their lives, and they don't see what Jennifer at Harvest House is doing, or Debbie over at Promises is doing, or, I could fill in the blank. I'm going to talk about all those, but I'm just saying that's one of the biggest things I like about doing the show. And I also like doing the show for small businesses, like I did yesterday with the Mixie Chicks. Or, I had Matt Cobb on a month ago, and I had Cody O'Brien on a month ago, and I had our friend Michelle Humphrey over at Hotworks on. I like promoting local businesses because they are seriously the lifeblood of the community. And so that's what I really do appreciate about this opportunity. And God willing, it'll continue next year. All right. So how about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as far as 2023, what did you think of the economy?
I don't know. It feels like it's tanking, but I feel like a lot of that's just the media trying to make us be fearful.
Well, here's what gets to me about the media and the economy is that you read the articles, particularly New York Times. They're the great user of the word "but" in their headlines. Economy is great, but not for everybody. Or the economy stinks, but people aren't complaining. But they'll always find an exception in their headlines. As far as the media goes, I think a lot of people tune it out because they don't base their own experiences with the economy based on what the New York Times, the Washington Post is saying. They go to the grocery store and they feel like they're getting mugged.
Yeah.
Or they try to buy a new car, or they try to find an apartment rent, and they don't care what
Rent's the same.
Yes, it's a craziness, and they don't care what the Wall Street Journal is saying about the economy. They don't care what they hear on the news about the economy picking up and all this, because in their lives they're not seeing it. And I saw Biden just get all over the media last week saying that you guys are not reporting the good news of our economy. It's really strong and all this other stuff. And I think when
the good news over here is just crickets.
Well, the good news is all statistics that don't relate to what's going on in people's lives. They say, well, the GDP grew 2.3% last quarter. Well, okay, great, but I'm still having to struggle to make ends meet. these local businesses, they talk about their expenses. I talk with Otto, like, for example, expenses of running a restaurant have gone through the roof, and things that you wouldn't think of, not just food product, but like, he was telling me one time he had a hard time finding straws. Okay. So you think straws, that's not that you would think about it. He had had a hard time finding other paper goods. And you'll tell you that the food prices have gone through the roof. But, you see on the news, well, the unemployment's low, X number of thousand jobs were created. Let me tell you a secret, boys and girls, about job numbers in the market. If you're working 15 hours a week, you're considered fully employed, whether you think so or not. The government thinks you are. And so if you take a second job, it counts as a created job for the stats, even though that second job is being necessitated in most cases because of inadequate pay on the first job. So if you got a guy that is working 40 hours a week and he picks up another job, on the weekends, whatever, he counts for the stats, even though I don't think most people would consider the necessity of working a second job as actually a good sign. So I never have. It's not Joe Biden that touts these numbers. Trump did it all the time. Obama did it. Everybody does it. I mean, it's the way the government's calculated the job markets for decades, and I just think it's an inaccurate reflection of what goes on in people's lives, and that's why what they see on the news and what they experience in their lives is such a split. And so as far as 2023, the economy scuffled. Okay. Inflation is still a problem. They say inflation's come down from 9.1 to like 3.2. And they're trying to make that into a big deal. Well, there's two things I'd say about that. First of all, 3.2 still means prices are rising. Maybe not as fast, but it's not, prices aren't going down. Second of all, once that hit that high of 9.1, the price is stuck there. They didn't come down. They haven't come down. And it's called the ratchet effect for those students of mine out there that remember me talking about that. Once a price level hits a certain level, it stays there. And so the inflation that's been caused in this administration, and they celebrate the fact that prices are rising slower than they did the last year, that's bizarre. Because, if a product doubles in price in 1 year, and then the next year it only goes up a quarter, and they want to call that a victory. Well, it's still more expensive than it was before. And so, the economy, 2023, the best I could say about it is it's scuffled. It wasn't the crash that a lot of people predicted. I thought 2023 would have a pretty significant recession, as well as about 90% of the people I read, and it didn't really happen. But as far as the prognostications of the next year, I'll do that after the second round of ads or promotions. But this year has been tough, and I have experienced it pretty well here. I talk to people usually before or after the show, and they'll tell you, when they're promoting local businesses, they'll tell you it's tough. I go to my BNI group on Wednesday mornings, and they'll tell you it's tough. And so I think that's one reason why Joe Biden's popularity is not what he thinks it should be, because they're up there singing this happy tune about here's going on with the economy, and like, it's not, I'm not seeing it. Okay. So let's shift gears and talk about 2023 politics. I would have lost a lot of money if you'd asked me this time last year that Donald Trump would be so far ahead in the Republican primaries. Absent an act of God, which I'm not wishing upon him, so let's not go there, but absent that, Donald Trump will be your Republican nominee. Taylor, do you think he'd be a Republican nominee a year ago?
I don't know.
Oh,
I maybe saw it, but wasn't as confident.
Well, I had no confidence, but why? What do you see that made you think that it was a possibility?
I just felt like the following he had, from the previous administration,
Mm-hmm.
and the way like the whole election stuff or whatever.
Yeah. Well,
I feel like he still had his following on that, so I felt like he definitely had a foot in the race, but I don't think other side's doing any benefit to them, trying to take them off the ballots and stuff. But
Yeah,
maybe that's another conversation.
No, well, I'll address that. Taking them off the ballots, I don't think is the right idea at all. I am not a big Trump fan at all. Okay, I got a lot of issues with Mr. Trump, primarily on the personal and the attitude side, if you will, or all the intensity and animosity he brings to this race. But because if he took Trump's name out of a lot of his policies and said this is what the Republicans are doing, blah blah blah, it wouldn't. In most cases, it would not be too much different than your standard Republican policies. And you can like or not like that. That's a different discussion. But he brings such controversy with them and such antagonism with them that I didn't think he would last that long. But taking him off the ballot's the wrong idea, because the reason why Maine is attempting it and Colorado is attempting it, and you have a case going on in Washington State, I believe, hasn't been decided yet, and then it was denied in Michigan and Minnesota. I think they're basing it on the 14th Amendment's interpretation of, anybody that was in rebellion against the United States is ineligible for office. Now, this was an amendment passed 3 years after the Civil War, and it was directed towards Civil War participants. Well, two things about that. One is within 20 years or so that the courts had so basically stripped that down that you had a lot of ex-Confederates in government all throughout the South and in Washington. There were many congressmen and senators in Washington, D.C. that were former Confederates. Second of all is the basis of these decisions are they're basically condemning him or convicting him of sedition without even being charged with it. That trial on January 6th is not one of sedition or treason or anything like that. It's basically election interference. Now, that's serious, absolutely, but it is not. It really doesn't, I don't know if it fits the definition of what the 14th Amendment talks about. And so basically what Colorado and Maine have done, and Maine didn't do it through a court, Maine did it through their state Secretary of State who handles their elections. But what they're saying, they're basically convicting him of a crime that he hasn't been charged with. And whether I like Trump or not, that's immaterial. That's not how the justice system works.
I feel like them doing this is just putting him way more ahead than he was before, amplifying his base.
Yeah, it does. It just puts more ammunition to his complaints that it's a conspiracy against him, and that the deep state's out to derail him, and that the government's out to get him, and all this other stuff. And it just confirms what millions of Americans think, is that Donald Trump is being not prosecuted but persecuted. And he has these 4 cases going on. I think a couple of them are bogus myself, but the one about in New York about over-reporting his assets, whether he did or didn't, I don't know. But the banks weren't bringing this lawsuit. It was the state of New York, and it was brought by a politician who campaigned on the basis of going to put Trump on trial. And then this other business about paying off a porn star. I mean, that's distasteful maybe, but I don't know if it's a crime been committed. But anyway, back to the matter. I just think what they're doing is they're stirring up the pot by keeping him off the ballot. Because now he can go around and say, see, I told you. And what are you going to say about that? As far as other politics, here in Texas, there's a really big push, and we had 4 special sessions on it that came to nothing about school vouchers. And I'd like to do a show on school vouchers when I can get into it more in depth. I'll probably do something like that in late January or February, because I think the Republicans have sold it in such a way to make it sound like that every poor child in Tarrant and Johnson County will now have access to go into a private school, and that's not what would happen. I got issues with public school system as a whole, but I'm often quite reluctant to talk about it because many of the problems that we see nationally are not problems that BISD has, or the problems that BISD has maybe at a lower level, and I don't want people to take it in that I'm criticizing our local school district solely. So I have to be careful how I bring it up because, a lot of the issues that, plague inner city schools, either Burleson doesn't experience or experiences them in such lower levels that it's not a predominant factor. But I don't want people to assume that I'm criticizing the school board or Dr. Jimerson or whatever else. So I have to really be careful how I phrase things like that. I mean, could BISD be better? They'll be the first to tell you that. That's why they keep going back to work. That's why they have an attentive school board, because they know there's always going to be areas for improvement. But as far as Texas goes, I think Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott are so fixated on those vouchers that everything else came to a halt. And a lot of money that should have gone to teachers and raises did not go to them this year. And they basically held the teachers hostage on that. So I am not a fan of Dan Patrick for a lot of reasons. And this is one of them, because he really has a serious, deep antagonism towards public schools. As far as the local Burleson politics, the last election we had, I look at this particular grouping of the council, and I think it's doing a really, really good job for the last 6 or 7 months since the elections, since we, Adam joined and we had the mayor's race resolved, and Phil Anderson's joined, Larry Scott joined. I think Victoria has told me that this is the best grouping and most collegial group that we've had in city council that she's experienced. And I think that's been evident, because what we argue and yell about in the city council meetings are what we should be yelling about, not personalities, not drama, not antagonisms, but city issues, the police station and infrastructure and parks. That's what governing is. Governing, people think governing has to be all, they hold hands and whatever, but no, sometimes the conversations can get pretty rugged, but if it's about issues, that's what government and politics are about. And that's how issues are resolved, sometimes with knocking of heads, as opposed to being distracted by personal vendettas and, drama and all the off the field stuff, so to speak. So I've been the last 6 months have been very pleased with at least what they're focusing on are the things they've been focusing on, and they seem to be coming to more or less a consensus on most issues. So, and we'll talk about what's coming up in the spring. As far as another area, though, it's really been bothering me is Israel and Ukraine. In both of those situations, things are not going that well, particularly for Ukraine. It's now wintertime. Their offensive stalled out in the summer. There's all this conversation by the Republicans in Congress not to give them more money and whatnot. Here's two things I'd say about that. Yes, there are examples of Ukrainian officials misusing the money, and sometimes not just carelessly, but for illegal purposes, embezzlement, whatever. It has happened. However, Zelensky says they're trying to root out corruption and crime. Okay, great. I support Ukraine, and I support us supporting Ukraine, because if we don't do something to stop the aggression of nations like Russia, it's only going to get worse. They're not going to be dealt with diplomatically. And so in the second half of the show, when we talk about prognostications, I'll talk about what I think is going to happen this year. But I do support continued financial support of Ukraine. What a lot of people don't realize, they think, okay, we're going to give $10 billion to Ukraine. They think that we're shipping $10 billion over and putting it in their treasury. That's not what's happening. What we're doing is we're spending $10 billion on American-made ordnance and equipment and supplies. And so who's really financially benefiting from this are American companies. Yeah, there are some cash transfers to the Ukrainian government, and that's where some of the gray area of embezzlement is where they're talking about. But anytime that we spend X billion dollars on Ukraine, 75-80% of it is spent here in the United States in new military equipment, et cetera. So it's financially, the United States has benefited quite a bit. As far as Israel goes, I saw last night the Israeli government and the Israeli army took responsibility for not only that friendly fire accident, which killed 3 of the hostages, of their own hostages, but also they took responsibility for bombing an area that led to higher civilian casualties than they expected. And they basically apologized, so to speak. I support Israel. That doesn't mean that everything Israel does, I'm going to say it's okay. I treat Israel like most other countries. Now, maybe they are a little different because of the heritage and history of that area and, all my background in the Old Testament and whatever else. But that doesn't mean I support Israel to the exclusion that they can do no wrong. They can do wrong. And they could do better in the West Bank. Some of the problems that we're having in the West Bank are caused by far-right Israeli settlers that are not obeying Israeli law, and they're setting up squatter communities, so to speak, in the West Bank. And that's where some of the antagonism comes from. Israeli law basically does not allow for settlements in the West Bank. And you have these far-right groups that say, we don't care, this is the land of David, we're going to go and settle there, and they're causing trouble. As far as Gaza, my opinion about Gaza is that the Palestinians there have been used as political pawns for decades, and these Arab nations are all indignant about what's happening there are hypocrites because they could have solved that problem themselves numerous times, but no, they will not take the refugees. They throw them a few pennies, and they use them as political distracting points for their home base. If Egypt opened up that southern border with Gaza, a lot of the people that have been killed would not be killed, but they won't. If Saudi Arabia or Jordan or Syria or you name the Arab country had taken some of those refugees, a lot of people that have been killed would not have been killed, but they won't do that. They want to blame it all on Israel. And the Gaza people, some of them, a lot of them are caught in between, Israel and Hamas. Hamas has used them as human shields. Hamas has used them as hostages, in effect. The events of October 7th were as horrific as anything I've ever read. And for us to expect Israel to react any other way and to put down their weapons now, it's not going to happen. And we would be the same like we were after 9/11. We weren't in the mood to negotiate with Al-Qaeda. And so people who think Israel is being hyper-aggressive, like these left-wing college students, they're obvious nitwits. I talked about that before. For the life of me, I don't know why we're teaching in college if they want to basically take on a group either want to support a group that wave their flags and whatever else, support a group that would, if Hamas ever achieved their goals, would kill people just like them. These people that are, left on all these attitudes about women and the LGBTQ community and diverse religious ideas of any at all those people would be subject to persecution, if not execution, if Hamas ever had their way. I don't understand. It's like, how these people are supporting a group that not only is that fanatical, but is so opposed just about everything that these people are. I just don't understand it. But there you are. But there was one good thing also, I would say, about 2020. That's our fighting Texas Rangers. Yeah. I would, if I'd have bet on the Rangers to go in the World Series, I wouldn't be doing this podcast. I'd be,
that's one thing we didn't see coming.
I surely did not. And
the real question next: are the Cowboys going to make it?
Please. I think the rapture happened before the Cowboys going back to the Super Bowl. The Rangers, I got to admit, I think I've been following the Rangers since I was a kid, since they moved from Washington to Arlington back in 71. Oh, Matt Cobb. I want to read this. I agree. Israel's not without fault, but that we are so much more in the right than Hamas. It's almost disingenuous to even compare the two. Any possible Palestinian progress is hindered by their acceptance and or tolerance of Hamas. Well put, Mr. Cobb. I think you encapsulated what I was trying to say. As far as the Rangers, I don't have sports heroes as such, but they come close to it because I've never seen a team that overcame more obstacles and difficulties than them. Injuries and the pitching staff was always seemed like this guy's going out and that guy's out. The bullpen blew up too often. Simeon was the only one that really played every game. Hine was out for a while. Seager's out 2 different times. Young over third was out for about 6 weeks, and Evaldi was out for about 7 or 8 weeks. Scherzer was in and out. And, DeGrom, we lost him in May, and yet there they are, and they go on the road in the World Series or the whole playoffs, and they won every home game. That's never happened before. There's never been an 8-0 road record, and so the Rangers, that playoff run of baseball was inspiring. And will they do it again next year? I do not know. Well, that's what after this round of the promos, then we'll talk about next year. Let's talk about the nonprofits. This is year end. This you have about 72 hours left to give, and they all have significant plans for next year. And I hope, I've gotten cards, I've gotten emails saying, here's what we're trying to do. Next Step Women's Center is trying to expand their testing for young women. And they're also trying to expand the program for the men, the young men involved. And so Next Step Women's Center, it had Megan on last week, and, she and Summer do such a great job. Next Step Women's Center, all these nonprofits I can't say enough about, but I really enjoy what they do because they provide an alternative to those young families, men and women, who find themselves in either, financial distress or an unexpected pregnancy, and they give them the option of life that they may not have had before. And so that's a great organization to support, and I certainly do. So thank you, Megan and Summer, for what you do. Also, another group I'm very fond of is Center for ASD with Lisa Boltinghouse and Bianca Lowry. They have really grown, and their program has really gotten a lot of support. They're also helping expand their programs as best they can because they're getting more and more clients. And they need more supplies, and they need some more materials, and pretty soon they're going to need more staff. And so it's become an area not just for Burleson parents and other people that have in their lives people on the spectrum, but it's now getting to be regional almost because you don't have a lot of these services. So thank you, Center for ASD. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Bianca. Thank you all, the whole group. Also, our friends at Harvest House, we'll have Jennifer on the late January. Usually have her on at the end of the month. They got the truck that they were looking for, and it'll be started and be used right at the beginning of the first of the year. And it's that's a blessing, and it's indicative of the kind of people we have in this town. But they got plans as well for the spring. The Jennifer and Debbie Beeman over at Promises are telling me they are every month breaking records in terms of use. And it's not just the amount of food that they give out, but also, like we talked about earlier, the economy is still hard for a lot of people. They can't get out from under debt because the jobs aren't paying enough and they're living out of their car. And so they're doing a lot of things in terms of like helping people with their utility bills and doctor bills and things like that. So a year-end donation would be very appreciated by both Harvest House and Promises community, because they do a lot of the same work, and they work together very well. Debbie and Jennifer are very close colleagues, and it's nice to see. They all are, actually. So, also, another group I'm very fond of is Fitability. I'll have Jessica on Tuesday. She's going to talk about her early February. I think it's February 2nd. It's the first weekend of February. She's going to have a fundraiser over at Lost Oak, and so there's sponsorships available, tables available, and she's going to come here and talk all about that on Tuesday. And I always enjoy talking with her because she's such a lively person. I'm really very, very fond of her. And so Fitability is going to be promoting this all throughout January, and we'll be helping them with that promotion. So come by Tuesday and hear all about it. Also, Reach Across Johnson County, my friend Eric Vyers is part of this. What they're doing this spring, they are, one of their bigger projects is they're doing a prom type project where they're not putting on a prom, but what they're doing is trying to provide prom dresses and prom tuxedos for young men and women that don't have access to the money to afford some of this. Prom is a big deal for a senior. And, I saw it all those years taught at BHS. I mean, how much emphasis that people put on prom and how much, what's a good way of putting it? How some kids, felt like that they were not experiencing it because they didn't have the money to afford a new dress or new tuxedo. So I remember a couple years, the couple groups on the BHS campus would collect dresses for young ladies who needed one. And a lot of times there's a lot of people have prom dresses or tuxedos either don't fit them anymore or they don't, you're not going to wear a prom dress just to, go to the grocery store. So it sits in the back of the closet. So if you have something you want to donate to that along those lines, they'll be more than glad to take it off your hands at Reach Across Johnson County. And Crazy Eights, we have them on, I believe, like the 16th or something like that. It's early, about mid of the month. Lisa does great work. At the last show, she brought one of her clients, and she's a woman named Jessica that runs the Moretti's Oil, and she's a client, and they do great work. And Lisa Schwartz is just a ball of energy, and so they're expanding. And they would very much appreciate a gift. They do great work for people that are trying to get back on their feet. They have no place to land. So thank you, Lisa, for what you've done for this community for a long time. I believe, yes, there we go. Here's our last one. In about a month, or no less than about 3 weeks, I'm going to have Stephanie Beard and Colin Gregory on again with the combined Chamber of Commerce and Burleson Police. They're putting out these posters as a combined effort to try to report and prevent abuse, assault of all kinds, domestic abuse, and violence. And that goes for both men and women. You hear mostly about women, and that's probably, statistically that's the case. But it happens to men too. Verbal abuse, emotional abuse, child abuse, you name it. And if you don't think you have a way to report that, now you do. These are in women's restrooms all throughout the community. And why women's restrooms? In many cases, that's the only place a woman may have private time from a stalker or an abuser. She can go in there, hit the QR code, and I'll put her in a link, and she could report what's going on. And will the police get involved? If you're reporting a crime, yes, they will. They'll also connect you to other victim assistance programs. And it also connect you to some of the nonprofits as well. So if you're not, if you're new to the community or you're not aware what's going on and you have a problem that one of these people I just described could help you with, then they are, this is a place to do it. And I think this is one of the best things that the Chamber and the police have put together. Speaking of the Chamber, Melissa will be on next Thursday. And I'm going to ask her if she could bring a guest. I hope she does. She's always pretty lively. Okay, that's all? Okay. Let's talk about 2024. Well, since I did such a bang-up job on 23, you want to write all this down, no doubt. Will the economy get any better? I think the rates will come down a little bit.
I say you should say one of each, and then we can clip whichever one is the correct one and be like, hey, we were right.
Yeah, right. I've been reading a lot of the prognostications. A lot of the pundits have been writing some similar to what I'm doing here, looking back at their prognostications. And the economy was one that a lot of them missed. It did not crash. Now, it did not do great, but they all think it was going to really hit the skids. And will it do in 24? Well, I'm not going to predict that. But I'm just going to say it's probably just going to scuffle along some more. Until interest rates come down, you're going to have a lot of retrenching, let's say. I mean, I told you earlier in the show what's happening with some of my sponsors. And so you have a lot of retrenching going on, and in the home markets and whatever else, the car market. That's another thing altogether. Also, the fact that the credit card debt has gone to new highs. I read yesterday in the Dallas paper that they had we had a really great Christmas as an economy, a lot of spending. Well, a lot was done on debt, so it's going to be a real reckoning sooner or later. And of course, you have the massive student debt, and then you have the tremendous national debt, $33 trillion and climbing, and that's going to be a factor. These economists that say that it really isn't as big a factor as you think it is, they're wrong. Sooner or later, and it's sooner, that's going to be a real factor in our national economy. And we'll see how that happens. And honestly, politically, I do not see either Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden do anything about it, because Trump didn't do anything about it his first term, and Biden certainly hasn't done it this term. So there you are. As far as other politics and other economic news, shall we say, who's going to win the election next year? Well, if I knew that with any surety, I would. I could make some money off that. This is my guess that Trump is going to win. He will not win the popular vote, but he'll win the popular vote in the states that matter. It doesn't matter if he gets blown out 80-20 in California, if he wins by 1% in Arizona. Last time I looked at state polls, this is about earlier in December, he was ahead. And they took 8 different states. He was ahead in 7 of them and tied in the other. The one he was tied in was Wisconsin. But on the average, he was ahead in Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Pennsylvania, which surprised me a little bit, Florida, and one more. I'm thinking my brain isn't working 100%. But a lot of the swing states that Biden won, he's now losing in. Or like I said, in Wisconsin, he's tied. And that's how a presidential election looks. If you see a poll that says Biden is up by 2 points or Trump is up by 2 points nationally, that's great, but it's the state polls that matter. And right now, I think because of the issues that Biden has not dealt with, the economy, and he certainly has not dealt with the situation at the border, that's going to be a big, big issue in the election, is immigration and the thousands and thousands and record-breaking. It's got to be such a problem. Even the national news has said it's a problem. That's when NBC is saying, "Hey, this is a problem." It's a problem because they usually try to gloss over some of these things. I'm going to say Trump, as I'm talking today, December 29th, Trump will win the election because of his lead in those states, and a lot of those states are the ones that are being impacted the most by illegal immigration. And that's a whole lot more serious problem than you can imagine, and it's going to be advertised and exploited by the Republicans to fare thee well, basically. So that's why I predict Trump. As far as local elections, we have 3 city council seats open. We have 2 school board seats open, and I am hoping and I'm praying that they are conducted without a great deal of animosity or acrimony. I don't know. I know that Victoria and Dan are running again. I know that Ronnie Johnson's seat is going to be open. So, and I don't have any idea in the world who's going to run in for those spots other than Victoria and Dan are going to run for re-election. I don't have a clue in the world. I know also Patsy Worrell is going to be stepping down at the school board. God bless her. She's done so much for this district. She's, as teacher, administrator, and board member, she's really served this community. So they'll have at least one open seat, and I believe Mike Yancey's the other one, and I believe he's running again, as far as I've heard. I hope we can have this election without a great deal of acrimony, without sensationalism, that it's appropriately conducted, that it doesn't get into personalities and to innuendo or gossip or, I hope that people that are running are all of good faith, that they want to work for this community and not for a certain faction of it or a certain area of it but for their own ego. I was asked the other day, would I have all the candidates on? And the answer is that the criteria for me to have a candidate on is not will I vote for them, but could I vote for them? I only have one vote, but if I have 2 candidates running for a race that I could see myself voting for, they will have an invitation to the show. If I think that they're running for the wrong reasons, that they're running to be divisive, they're running because they have a chip on their shoulder, or they're running to, a vengeance tour, to, or whatever you want to call it, where they see themselves as the appointed avenger of aggrieved parties, forget it. But if people know how fond I am of Victoria, but if she gets a quality candidate, Victoria would be the first to tell you that I should have him on the show or her on the show. But I'm not going to have somebody on there that's just here to cause dissension. I tell you, but there's also going to be another political issue that there's 2 or 3 political issues that's going to face community. We still have to deal with the police station expansion. That has not been resolved as of yet, but it's, it takes a while to resolve these things. And that's brought up some commentary, and that's going to be part of the issues that will be asked about. And there will be Old Town renovations and the processes about that, and some of the business owners of the Old Town who feel like, for one reason or another, that they're not being dealt with fairly by the city, and we'll talk about that. And we did before. I think Victoria, if you want to know what happened with a lot of that, look at the show I did with Victoria 2 weeks ago. I think she explained it pretty well. And also another issue is going to be the alcohol issue. I don't know if you noticed this, most of you may have, but at the post office and other places, they are collecting signatures for a petition to allow for liquor stores in Johnson County, part of Burleson. That's going to bring in some controversy. Personally, I've said this before, whether you drink or not, it's up to you. Whether you patronize a liquor store is up to you. That's none of my business, nor my concern. But I know it puts Burleson restaurants at a disadvantage against Tarrant County restaurants because of the fact they can only buy liquor essentially from one place down in Alvarado, and it causes a great deal of expense. We talked about this yesterday with the Mixie Chicks, so you can check that out if you want. Okay, I've got a phone call here. I'm going to see who this is. I just spam, doggone them. Anyway, I thought it might be somebody else. Anyway, the point is that how you feel about these issues we'll get discussed, but that's going to be the issues of this spring. As far as any other prognostications about 2024, I think the Ukraine war is going to grind on. I think that's going to be a big issue of whether or not how much America is going to be involved in it. And like I said earlier, I support it. Same with Israel, but that's not going to be resolved. Even if this war comes to an end in 24, it's just a phase of a generational conflict that our children will inherit. But we'll see what happens. They seem to be pretty serious about taking out Hamas. As far as the sports, forget about the Cowboys. They're going to gack it up in the playoffs. They might win the first round because they'll be playing a weaker team. And then after that, they'll be playing San Francisco or somebody like that. And then it's good night, nurse. I don't know what it is about the Cowboys, but they don't seem to have what the Rangers have, which is just a determination that they just, I don't even know to put my finger on it. As far as other, sports, college sports, whatever else, I'm going to take Alabama to win the national championship in 2 weeks. And it's just a guess. And basketball, I love college basketball. A lot of people don't really like it as much as I do. My cousin up in Kiowa County doesn't like it as much as I do, and he thinks I'm weird for it, but that's okay. I'm going to say who the national champ is going to be, and I hate to say it. I'm going to bite my tongue and have to say it, but I think it's going to be Kansas. Ugh, I hate Kansas. But there you are. Taylor, you got anything?
I don't know.
No.
Not that I can think of.
Not anything of? Okay. Well, I don't want to return this call from potential spam.
Hey, you never know who that could be.
Well, unless they put their name on it, I'm not really that interested. They're going to say,
I'm going to name my first kid potential spam.
Good for you. What did you name your first kid?
I don't have a kid.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That I know of.
Oh, yeah. No.
On that note.
Okay. As far as the rest of you guys, I hope you have a good holiday. And I want to thank again all the sponsors for this year. It's been tough, and I appreciate your support all this time, and I appreciate the ones that are leaving us, hopefully just temporarily, but who knows. But I appreciate all the support they've given us over the years, and I appreciate the fact that I hope to see you next Tuesday, starting all over again, another new year. Like I said, Jessica Valley-Reams will be talking about her fundraiser and the work she does with the disabled in terms of keeping their fitness. And then I have Chamber of Commerce on. And we'll talk about the program to try to end assault as best we can in this community, and also what else the Chamber's got going on. in 2024. Taylor, you have a good weekend.
You as well. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year, all y'all. And we'll see y'all in about 4 days.